our society tends to optimize for money. It's like, hey, well, you could make way more. Like I saw this dope Airbnb with detached ADU, and it's like, why don't I do that? And it's like, well, because I'm not optimizing for money in my life right now. Optimizing for money is great, and I'm trying to make money, but attention is so much more important to me. You know, connection with my faith and God is really important to me, with my family and just my psyche. If I'm constantly focused on money and trying to optimize that, then I can't be focused on some of these other things. So I think, I don't know, that's just what comes to mind as far as I think people get into houses and then pretty soon the house owns them, you know?
Well, Steve, brother, good to see you coming in here, hanging out. We were just, we just had a great conversation. Marketing and I know, honestly.
Your audience cares about that.
Yeah, I know. We were talking about marketing, branding, Google, you growing, expanding.
Yeah.
But thanks for coming on. I think we've been following each other on social, and we ended up, I think, officially meeting at the rent control event.
Yeah.
Which is we'll get into today. That's such an exciting topic.
Yeah,
not really.
Exactly. It is, but it isn't, right?
Yeah, but can you kind of jump in, tell us a little about you, what you got going on, what you do? Obviously, I know you're in property management, but kind of how you started, where you're at, and kind of maybe how your business model could be different from somebody else's. Or I know obviously you're winning in the game, so you're doing something right.
Yeah, absolutely. So name's Steve Welty, company is Good Life Property Management. I'm the
Love
CEO.
the name.
Thank you. Yeah, people always told me that. They're like, man, a great name, but I had my first hater early on. I remember I did my incorporation, and literally the first week I'm taking the elevator up, and the guy's like, oh, like, what's your name of your business? I'm like, Good Life. He's like, sounds like a vitamin company. I was like all depressed.
Oh my God.
So, you know, it's good to get that out of the way. But no, so we're in San Diego. We just opened up our second office in Orange County. We've been doing it 10 years. We have a team of about 43 people.
Damn.
22 are stateside. The other 22 or 23 are global team members that just crush it and do awesome customer service, admin support, things like that. And, we specialize. We got our start really servicing the clients that other management companies didn't like, which were basically accidental landlords. They're sometimes called, or first-time landlords. They inherit a home. They don't mean to buy their home as a rental, but they rent it because they get a new job in Tennessee or whatever. And so the people, those types of clients we found really want education. They really want to understand. They don't want to know how to be a property manager, but they just don't know anything about the process. So they really value frequently asked questions like we were talking about, and having those dialed in, and blogs, and like, what is depreciation, and what is, I have to sell within 3 years if I want to get a capital gains tax exclusion if I live there, they just don't know any of these things.
Wow, you're educating a lot of stuff. That's cool.
Yeah,
Smart.
Yeah. So
Smart.
we just started early with blogging and videos. We have 700 videos on YouTube.
Damn.
And we've just been going at it for a while. And I think that's the first thing that really sets us apart. And the second thing is just through that reputation and building trust. I remember learning from Marcus Sheridan. I don't know if you ever read his book or heard of him, but he's a marketing guy that wrote They Ask You Answer. It was very early
marketing book around answer your clients' most frequently asked questions, do it better, and put your pricing on your website. Like at the time, people in my industry at least weren't putting pricing. And so he's like, when you go to a customer's website or a business's website, do you like to know the price? Like,
yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, you got to call because I don't want my competitors seeing it. So anyway, it was just this road I went down of transparency and education that helped build trust, which helped us drive a ton of reviews. So reputation's always been big for us. And and then just making it easy for clients. Like we have a 6-month money back guarantee. It used to be actually a year. And then my team was like, no, actually, let's just make it 6 months because it's like, hey, we either make your life good and we free up time and energy and get you results, or we give you the
It's either good life or bad life.
So
it's been pretty good though. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we talked, I think you kind of know, Crystal and I, we went down that road. We did property management. At the peak, we're at 1,500. I think we had a different model. We were doing, we talked about more multifamily. Yeah. We were also doing, a lot of rehab, all that. It was a lot.
Did you have handyman or construction?
Yeah. Yep. We had a lot. Wouldn't recommend it because I think it was overwhelming. I think you obviously run yours better. I think people got better, but it's a tough business, right? Yeah. I mean, but it seems like you're here, you seem chill, you seem this, but I know there's always things going on. I think a lot of people that run property management business, it runs them into the ground.
Yeah.
And so how have you been able to scale and kind of, you seem like you're just like, you wouldn't think you own a property manager, just kind of, and I say that like, cause you're able to get out there and do a lot of stuff. And some people are just so in there, they have no time for anything else in their life. Cause people like that. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. A big part of my journey was around Strategic Coach. Like they really helped. It's a coaching program that helped us figure out how to create a self-managing company. And then now I'm in the framework of trying to figure out a self-multiplying company. But I think it's also just who I am. Like positivity is one of my gifts and strengths. And so I mastermind with a group of guys on a monthly basis in the industry, and 6 out of the 8 of them talk so bad about the industry, say it's, oh, it's thankless, it's horrible. Why do we have to pay our people so, it's just, and I'm like, I just see it completely different.
Different lens.
Yeah, I just have a different lens. I just see it as a huge opportunity. Like I want to make it cool.
You're always smiling, dude. I see on social. Even if it's bad, you're like, I got bad news today, I'm smiling. I'm like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, man, it's just
that's your vibe.
Yeah, and I think the way we have it set up, thank you by the way, is it's kind of a hybrid departmental portfolio approach. So traditionally, one property manager does everything. They answer the phone at 4 a.m. They lease the property. They manage the property, everything soup to nuts. That can be great for clients because you have one person and you feel really comfortable with them, but that's really hard to find that unicorn that's good at everything. Yeah. And that also to scale that.
It's not scalable. Let's be honest. You're tapping out at something. Yeah. Whatever, the 50, I mean, you start, it's just consumes your life, like we said.
And then they leave, and then it's like Julie left, and now all your clients leave because they like Julie. And so we have like a leasing department, a rental applications division, a property management department. And so the challenge with that is owners do have to talk to multiple people sometimes, but we try to make the handoffs really, or the transfers really clean and make sure they understand, okay, cool. That, John leased your property. You got a great result. Now I'm speaking as John. I'm going to pass you over to Kevin, and Kevin's going to be your property manager. And then we keep continuity with the property managers while it's occupied. But I think the cool thing with that approach is that you can really find people that are gifted at certain types of tasks and operate in unique ability. Because one of the challenges not challenges, but things that light me up is not having work feel like work, and there's certain gifts that we all have where we don't feel like we're working, and that doesn't start day one. You get to come to Good Life and just do what you love, but we try to hire that skill set. And then if you add value, work your way into less stuff, more energy. It's like principle 8 at Good Life. Okay. Less stuff, more energy. What feels like stuff, what feels like energy, and just move towards energy. And then you have a team of just highly motivated, highly energized people that, get good results for the customer.
What software are you using?
We use Appfolio.
Okay, I figured. Yeah. It's good.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing because some people might know they hear this, but it's like, there's the Yardi, and then there's the what's the other big one,
So there's Rent Manager, there's Buildium, there's
what's the other big one I'm talking about? Yardi, and then the it's expensive.
I'm not sure. Oh,
I'm talking about. Yeah, it's the other big animal.
One more, yeah.
They're like the big. Yeah, it's just crazy. So it's funny because Appfolio we started using. No, I'm talking about. It starts with an E or something.
Okay. Then I don't know.
It might come to me. They're like as big as Yardi. Okay. But we made a mistake. We were using, I think, because we got in this and actually out later than you, but we were just listening to other owners, and then we were like, ended up using another company. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's just such a beast. And then we ended up at Appfolio. I was like, wow. Yeah. And a lot of people that's where we say, hey, Appfolio is great. So are you loving that software? Like,
we do love Appfolio. The funny thing, what a business, man. Appfolio, they went public. I loved how they did things because they're constantly updating, adding value. And there's a great line.
They have a good vibe too. They're like from Santa Barbara, right? Like, but they're like cool people there. They work there.
They are.
They like I feel like they enjoy their life. Like most people don't.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Santa Barbara. Yeah. They're going through a little bit of a shift, I think, cultural. Actually, I don't really know, to be honest, but I remember a friend taught me this saying. He picked it up from some book or something, where value is not received unless value is recognized. Meaning you can like add value for your customer, but if they don't know, they don't know. And so Appfolio every day is always adding, hey, we did this to their portal. And so I always love that over time, it's always getting better. But I kind of laugh because property management software has very low client attrition because it's so painful to leave a software. And so they've done some things recently with pricing that some of the customers didn't like, and like, they don't have to go into it, but yeah, I'm like, hey, it's got to be a lot more painful than this for us to go elsewhere. And I like the product.
Yeah, I mean, there's people that are at Yardi and people, I don't understand how you move. And I said, like bigger owners that we know, you're like, do you understand the magnitude of moving thousands? Like, it's like, they're like, no, not this point in my life. They're like, I'm sure it's better, not doing it. The cost, the time, they don't even want to deal with it. They're like, this works, leave it. And I get it, because it's a lot to move software, you know. Oh my gosh.
Your clients,
you're not taking a couple steps back. You're like, you're disrupting your whole team, everything, and it's never perfect. So that's cool. You like that. So you've been doing this like 10 years, you said? Yeah. Okay, cool. What's your, for people listening, what's your biggest lessons you learn, like top 5 lessons just learn?
Yeah.
Not even just running a private manager, but like being in the business where it's like, man, if somebody's watching this, it's like, you know, I'm going to buy that investment property. I think I'm going to self-manage. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, well, that's great, but you should really understand, I've done this for 10 years. These are some takeaways that you really should take into consideration.
Yeah, 100%.
Because this could ruin your life.
Yeah, so to the investor or the person just not even an investor, but thinking about getting a rental property, I think I started in this business because I wanted to own 100 homes. That was my goal when I was young. Like a kid, right? Not a kid, but in college or whatever. So I wanted to learn what the carpet cost and what the drywall cost and all those things. So I guess it just depends someone's aim. If someone wants to scale and own a bunch of rental properties, it's really smart to probably do it yourself at first so you can learn it, or at least get with a company that can kind of teach you. So that's something that comes to mind. Also, time. I'm just everyone values different things.
Yeah.
And I just really value time, and that, you know, basically you trade life or you trade money. And so
that's a good point.
That's why I never got into Airbnbs, even like personally, just not to throw shade at all, but just like my attention, people always, it was funny. I wrote it down on the way over here. Our society tends to optimize for money. It's like, hey, well, you could make way more. Like I saw this dope Airbnb with detached ADU, and that's like, why didn't I do that? And it's like, well, because I'm not optimizing for money in my life right now. Optimizing for money is great, and I'm trying to make money, but attention is so much more important to me. You know, connection with my faith and God is really important to me, with my family and just my psyche. If I'm constantly focused on money and trying to optimize that, then I can't be focused on some of these other things. So I think, I don't know, that's just what comes to mind as far as I think people get into houses and then pretty soon the house owns them. You know,
that's what I just said. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
It literally ruins their life.
Yeah. It ruins their life. And so that can happen, but it's kind of sometimes a lesson to learn. Another thing is I wish I never sold any of my real estate. And that's a big thing I preach is like, never sell a home you live in, you know?
Yeah. One of, we have some big owners here, friends, mentors. His line is, always a good time to buy, never a good time to sell.
Nice.
And he goes, the biggest regret will be always when you sold.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, you selling that. You're like, why did I sell? Like, it's like, I know, hopefully it's a trade up, but what we've done with our build, but it's not if you sold it to like, you're like, oh, you know, especially now, you're like, oh.
Yeah. And
place
trade
like
ups, of course. Those make sense. But yeah, it really dawned on me about a year and a half ago when I started talking more about it in my content is there's very few things in life almost everybody regrets and then continues to do. And like, that's one of the unique things there. It's like, oh, well, I don't regret selling it. It's like, well, enough time hasn't passed.
Yeah.
You will. Like, you'll look over to the top left and be like, oh man, that place, I wish I would have owned that. It's, you know, 20X. But anyway, that's another thing. And, you know, I don't know. I guess those are probably the 3 things that come to mind as far as from an investor standpoint, someone getting started.
Yeah. And I think backing up, I think one of the things you said is like, not being so tactical and being, like we said, reality. It's your what do you cherish your time? Yeah. And I think so even us, we have the long-term rentals apartment buildings that are being managed, but then we have a vacation rental that we manage. It's actually not that bad. That's because we've got it down. We have a good cleaner and stuff. And I think we have a background in management. So when things come up, we're not like, oh, we just know we're okay with dealing with it. But it's also, you get to a point too where you're like, yeah, you're going to start really valuing your time, and it's not about money. Because really, you start realizing, like, yeah, you can make a lot more money, but if you don't have time, you're not around your kids and family, you're like, what's the point, right? So I always tell people that, like, if you could self-manage, even if you're like, don't want to, but maybe do it for a little bit just to learn, to see, like, problems, this and that. Also, what really is the cost to run it, So when you bring somebody in, you have some expectation. But I totally agree with you. The other thing I was going to say is when you guys take on a property, when you bring on a property, how do you bring somebody on? Like, what is the expectation with you guys? I think a lot of people, they throw a property to somebody and then there's no expectation set, there's no nothing, and then there's a problem. Like, it's like, wait, I didn't know that, I didn't know this, or there was no plan, or this or that. Yeah. And I was wondering how you guys take on a property that somebody, whether they're, active or have one, or the accidental real estate investor. It's funny you said that, because I actually wrote a blog, because a lot of people have become accidental real estate investors because they locked to 30 or fixed at 2.5. Yeah, there you go. And they're like, I'm going to buy another house, but they're like, wait a minute, I can rent this out and make money. I'm not going to sell. That's like an annuity, a 401k. And so I just said, you're the accidental. Like, oh my gosh. I said, because you never ever planned on this, but it's so good, you're not going to pass that up. Yeah. But then they're like, should I manage? And that's where it's like, they call you. What is that conversation? What does that look like? Right.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's opportunity of a lifetime, what you alluded to. But when they sign up with us or they have a consultation, what's really cool is because of our education on our website and because of how many blogs we've done and videos, people come in very warm and they're like, they understand mostly what we do.
It did the work for you.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. And that's what I think from a business standpoint, some of the content, like we were talking about, it's hard to measure ROI, but a good ROI I actually learned from Layla Hermosi when I was at their acquisition.com conference was how easy is it for your sales team to close deals? Like how much friction, how many objections are they overcoming? And so I think we've always had a high, acquisition ratio on our leads. And I think that's a big part of it. But so they come in, they might have some additional questions, but we identified 5 or 6 main client types. And so we kind of know we try to find what type they are pretty quick. And so there's the person renting their home falls into 2 types. The save time type, like they trust you. It's not a big source of worry. They're just hiring you to save time. Then there's the worry type, like they're worried about this house. They didn't buy it to rent it out. And so we want to know, okay, what is your biggest worry with this house? Is it the carpet? Is it the tree in the back? Is it your neighbor who's been paying for 3 years and now you're worried about a tenant moving in here and like disclosure or whatever? Okay. And so we'll get really close to the bottom with that. With the time people, we're pretty usually clear because they want quick information, summarized, us to make the decisions, but bring them in on the bigger stuff. So it's just getting to like, what does success look like? We have a list of questions we ask, like, what does success look like? How could we really make this a great experience for you? What's most important to you? And people will generally start with some of the base stuff. Well, I want a tenant that pays rent on time and I, don't want hassle. But it's like, what do you want us to avoid? Things like that. So we'll do that with the initial sales consultation, and then we just make sure that there's really good notes and that there's warm handoffs between the sales team and then the leasing team. And so everything's very transparent. So we have a $500 maintenance limit, but during the leasing process, every maintenance issue to start establishing trust is ran by the owner. So they know like, hey, this the changing the lock's going to be this much, even though it's under $500. Carpet cleaning, does all this sound good? Make sure we're in alignment, because you'd be surprised, you might think you're getting them a good deal on something and they think that's like crazy expensive, and then it becomes an education thing. And so that's how we kind of make sure we understand what they value, because that's ultimately what we're selling is value. And so getting to the bottom, that's what we talk about at Good Life. We say our culture differentiator is we're a culture first company. So we're team first. That's value driven and values led. So we teach value to our team. And I think you and I have been doing business a while, so we understand value, but we probably didn't 10, 20 years ago. No. When we started, like we didn't understand what people value. So it's just uncovering that and delivering it in unique ways. Yeah,
that's awesome. I always think this too, something for owners to think about while they're watching this, and you probably shot content. If not, this is a good piece, is when you have the scale you have to get the carpets clean, locks, all this, they're just paying less than if they went direct, or they don't know where to go, or they don't know if that guy's going to show up. Yeah. Because if you book it and that guy doesn't show up, that guy doesn't want to lose your account. Like you're a vendor. So we started taking over property management because we did a lot of rehab and stuff. There'd be a slab leak or something like that, and they're used to calling like a Bill Howell or somebody. No offense to Bill Howell, but they're not cheap. And we would do it for a fraction. Like, oh my gosh, I save so much money. I'm like, well, that's the point. Like, we can run it better. the whole point is hopefully we can do it better than you, right? So save you money, less headache, less time, go enjoy your life. Here's a check. We'll call you if we need you type thing. Do you think when your clients are coming in, do you think by having a property manager coming to yourself, besides the fee, that if you're running it, you can run it more efficient, you can save money? Do you talk about that? Is that something you believe in, or?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. We should be doing a better job than our clients. Now, not every time. There's some people that self-manage probably better than we could manage it, right?
Yeah, but it could be their full-time job too.
Yeah.
So you're like, how can you compete with that?
Yeah,
You know,
I run into them at California Apartment Association events, or like, there might be a few in there that are just great at what they do. They do a lot of the work themselves, and it makes sense. Like, it doesn't make sense for everyone to have a property manager. Like,
no.
Especially if you don't want to give up control. Some people enjoy it. Some people like the real estate tax write-off you get for being a professional, if you're involved heavily in your rental properties. But yeah, I mean,
we've been working on this for the past few months. You know, we always want to bring as much value as we possibly can. And our partner, Prime Corporate Services, is all about bringing you a service you can't get anywhere else at a price you can't get anywhere else. Whether you're new to owning a business or owning a property, or you're an experienced property owner or investor, Prime Corporate Services is not only going to help you, but they're going to make the process so much easier. So if you book a call, the first thing they're going to do for you is help you understand what your business structure should look like, your corporate structure, tax planning, estate planning, all of that. Maybe you're saying, I'm brand new to starting a business and all this sounds foreign and complicated. Remember, this company helps new people just getting started every day. They're going to help you form the entity that's best for you and walk you through the process. Before I found this company, we paid thousands of dollars to other attorneys, CPAs, and consultants to try to understand exactly how we need to be structured to be as protected as possible. We've also gone the other route and used online platforms to form entities which unnecessarily put us at risk. You guys, you don't have to do that with this company. They'll do all of these things for you at a reasonable price, so you never have to think about saving money at the expense of exposing yourself to liability. We've searched high and low, and you will not find this much value anywhere else. All you have to do is schedule a free call today. Just go to primecorporateservices.info/GITCG. Once again, that's primecorporateservices.info/GITCG. We'll also leave the info for you in the show notes.
So I grew up in Palm Desert, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Palm Desert. Born in Colorado Springs, grew up in Palm Desert, came out here in 2000 to go to San Diego State, and just never left, man. Yeah.
That's the story.
Yeah.
And how did you get into property management?
Let's see. I was a sales agent in 2006, 7. I think I got my license, and I did first year Prudential in Mission Valley.
Okay.
Rookie of the year. I don't know how I won that award, because I think I only did like 4 or 5 deals, but I felt rich, right? Because I had 4 or 5, 10 5-figure checks. Anyway, and then just didn't know how to manage money, market corrected. I was broke, and I was at the lowest point in my life. I was actually, drinking a lot of the time. I've been sober 15 years.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you. And so I was at rock bottom. I answered an ad for a assistant for this French entrepreneur in Carlsbad. This guy, Robert, it changed my life. He's a really interesting guy, but he wanted an assistant to like pick up his laundry and stuff, but also to manage his property manager, because he owned like 50 units. He didn't trust his manager. and I had a real estate license. And so I was like, dude, getting his dry cleaning, picking up his kids and stuff. But then also I was like 26 or 7, managing his manager. And I was looking at the P&Ls and reading these reports. I'm like, dude, I could do better than this guy. This guy's making $600 a month on this building. Like, wow, that would pay my rent, whatever. So my friend and I ended up going into business together. We ended up getting a couple of doors, 2-3 doors, and we actually got really lucky, which I think was a big part. In 2008, nobody could sell, and so everyone was renting their homes. And we were early on Yelp at our first business, Beyond Property Management, with my partner at the time, Danielle, who I'm still good friends with.
Oh, Beyond. Okay.
Beyond, yeah. So I co-started that company, and then we started building Yelp, a reputation on Yelp, but we were early there. And so, yeah, that's kind of how it got kicked off. And we started with really low fees and kind of started realizing we had to charge more and adding more
to stay in business.
Yeah, to stay in business.
Yeah.
And just learning as we go, man. That's kind of how it happened.
That's cool. That's a good story. Let's pivot and talk about San Diego, the market, managing here. Yeah. I think when we got in, obviously, I feel like, it's kind of funny. California has this negativeness about owning property, politics, rent control, blue state. I've interviewed a lot of people all over the country just on this, on this platform that are syndicators and stuff, Grant Cardones, things like that, right? And even Grant was like, man, I should have never sold my stuff in San Diego, right? But a lot of people are like, that place sucks. I would never invest there, Yeah. And so, and I get it, but the way I look at it is like, I don't see that way, I don't see that way. I don't feel that way. I think it's done really well. You're here, you're doing it. Before we kind of get into rent control stuff, what might come, whatever, what challenges do you see here in San Diego that are making it more challenging to own property, or maybe that maybe somebody should have a property, have that property manager, and it could be from a legal thing or telling it something wrong to a tenant. And that's why some people are hiring. They're like, I don't want to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing and end up in. If I get sued once, it'd have been cheaper to hire you, right? Yeah. So, what are you guys kind of seeing on the forefront of managing? Since you started, how things have changed? I know there's a rent control we can get into more, but just like from fundamentally and
it's funny, different people in different markets. I noticed early in my real estate investing, because that's how I started. I was very investor mindset. I was like, I want to be an investor. I want to own all these homes. That shifted once I started building a business, because I actually realized I actually don't like looking at properties or like I really love building a business, working with people. So I built a small portfolio, but that my kind of mindset shifted. Yeah. But I noticed when I was into that world big time, cash flow investors thought appreciation investors were nuts, and appreciation investors almost didn't even understand cash flow investors either. Like we didn't even think about them, because I can make $500 a month. It's almost like LA, like San Diego hates LA, but LA doesn't even think about San Diego. It's like that's kind of the appreciation market. So I've been educated over the years by some good mentors who have been like, hey, if you're buying in San Diego, you might need to put 40% down. Like now you're not going to get the return, but the cash on cash return, but you're buying it for different reasons. You're buying it for appreciation, and so I think it just depends what you value and what your game is, and at so many different things work. And so starting off with a good why, I think, is really important for any client, kind of like what we talked on a little bit earlier. And a great phrase a guy taught me, I was like, why are you buying all these properties? He's like, because they don't require my brain, like my business requires my brain, my job requires my brain, but my family, if I have these properties that I can pay for, our expenses and all that. So, getting some properties under your belt in San Diego, especially if you live here. Like, let me ask you, if you didn't live here, would you buy in San Diego?
Probably not, because I don't know it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like being where you're at and being successful where you're at, I think is a huge part. Yeah. It's a lot harder to be, and I think most people attest to that in different states. So when I first started, the laws were a lot more lax. Yeah. You could kind of just learn as you go. But now what I get most sad about is when people burn out and they try to like, let me rent this place and see how it goes. And then they're like, oh, this sucks. Let me get out of here. It's like, you just missed out on one of the biggest wealth building opportunities of your life, because you didn't set yourself up for success. You didn't have the right why. You didn't get the right team. And so initially you could kind of give notice on a Microsoft doc and whatever, you send it out, or you tell the tenant you don't want college kids and whatever. But now there's just so many laws that you're really putting your asset at risk. Like, so many people are breaking laws they don't even know they're breaking. And I feel bad for them, because they've really been set up for failure by a lot of the government, how restrictive it is. But yeah, I mean, someone starting then could really go trial by fire. But now if you're starting and you're doing it yourself, you absolutely, I don't highly recommend you get involved with a local association and go to those workshops and get educated, because you're just rolling the dice. You get caught in some Section 8 issue or some fair housing issue. So yeah, it's changed a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating. Some of the stuff that's changed, I get it, makes sense. But then some of it's, I don't even know if I don't look at it as overreaching. I just look at it, I don't think these people are educated on what they're passing. Doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. And, that's how we kind of met. We had this little, we kind of formed this quasi committee. Yeah. But that kind of came when that rent control, I think it was 21, came up, and we ended up having to hire a lobbyist, because we were like, whoa, what is all this, what's all this stuff going on here? And we jumped in there. We got this whole thing, what they're going to do. We jumped in, I know we had meetings with the city and things like that, and we were like, there's no way you're going to pass that, and they honestly, it was so fast. We were like, they're like, what do you think we'd accept? It's like, we're speaking on behalf of everybody. It was like, almost like, we don't have time to go reach out to people. You guys got to go back. Okay. They're like, we're not going to kill it, but we got to have some common ground. And so like what you have now, could be further, but now is basically the thing they would accept. They want it more.
You're talking about San Diego protection?
Yeah. I mean, but I think it's just, it's frustrating for owners because we, just like you work with a lot of mom and pa, and 85% of San Diego is mom and pa investors. But, Crystal's been doing financing for a lot of these people for a long time. We know them. And they want to run their own property. They want to raise rent on, Kenny and Steve whenever they want to. They're like, well, Kenny and I go to lunch every couple of years, and we break bread and we talk about how's it going. And then we go, cool, hey, haven't raised you. You're at this, and I know market's here, but can we do this? And we agree. And then they sign there, and then we have a lunch in 2 years, and Kenny's happy. He's my tenant. And then now I've got to go and give Kenny this notice every year to raise, because if not, I'm behind. Now Kenny's mad at me. And that relationship's been torn. And for somebody that's had that tenant or this, and that's how they've ran their business, like you said, they can't do it that way. I think so for a lot of small people, that's what's frustrating. They're like, you're telling me how to do this, but I've been doing this for 30 years, 40 years, some people 50 years, and it's worked just fine. Yeah. The tenants are happy. Now they don't talk. And we were able to hear from, we went down to the city when that thing was going on, and I heard the people, and that's what I heard a lot of is people like, you've ruined my relationship because of these laws. Yeah. Because tenants are confused, and then they're like, wait a minute. I thought rent control is supposed to help us. Why am I getting rent increases? Yeah. And they don't realize if I get behind, we cannot go have that lunch. And I go, hey, you're behind 1,000 and I got to move you 500, but I can't, 500's over 10%, but it's okay. You didn't care, but we can't do that. And then people call me and I go, no, you can't. If you have an agreement with me and I do that, you could do that. But if I hit my head, wake up and say, hey, I didn't agree with that, I go to court, that's the law says no. And they're like, what? I said, doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's interesting. It takes away the relational aspect. I haven't thought a lot about
for a lot of mom and pas. Yeah, that's what. So the ones that we know that this is their bread and butter, this is their bit. Like you said, I own 50 units, 100 units. That kind of people live off that. Yeah. And they're like, they've had these, and now there's this uncomfortable relationship. There's this, tension. That's the word, tension. Yeah. And so what these laws do is they win votes, I guess, but then they confuse tenants, and then landlords, they just make, like you said, life challenging when they're just trying to run a business. Yeah. It's like, oh, you lost on a technicality. That's what I tell people. You go to court, you can lose on a technicality. Be like, what?
At your event, I met a couple people, just new people I met who were going through lawsuits that are, damaging to their life as far as being stressful, and they'll probably work out and they won't like sack them or anything, but over the type wasn't big enough on the notice, or they offered it back to the tenant and still they didn't quite follow the process. So yeah, it's very challenging. Like, from a high level, I talk to people, to go back to your other question too a little bit, which I think ties in, is that why invest here? It's so frustrating, or it's so challenging. That ultimately will lead to higher prices and higher values. You know what I mean? So it's like, if you look at the places with the highest rent control, it always has the highest values, property values. And I think, do you ever listen to the All In podcast?
Yeah, love it.
Okay, cool. So they did, I think, their summit last year, and one of the guys on there, I don't know if you saw it, but I forget his name, but he showed this very clear correlation between regulatory capture and prices. And so every industry, the more regulations go up, the more prices increase. And it was actually interesting.
Gosh, you can't think who that was. I know you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I kind of understood that already. But another cool thing I didn't realize was a lot of these companies want the regulation. Like the Facebook wants, like when you see Zuckerberg say, we want some more laws on AI or whatever, it's not because they're good people. It's because, I mean, I'm not calling them bad people for that, but it's because it creates regulatory capture and new entrants can't come into the market. And so I feel like rent control lowers competition, which ultimately hurts the customer. And so, yeah, but for people who live, if you live in the Midwest, you're probably not running to go invest in San Diego. But if you live here and you want to own property here and you want to benefit from the appreciation, just turn it over to a manager if you can't handle it, because like a good one, because you're going to be fine, I think, ultimately.
Yeah, because then you just protect yourself. You're out of it.
Yeah.
And I think but you are right. There's, there's a proposal for national rent control, which will probably never pass.
Yeah.
But, you get these big apartment owners that have holdings and, New York. And in New York, we talked about there's 90,000 vacant units. And the reason why there's 90,000, they're protesting. They're like, so I have to fix this unit up, and you're telling me I can only raise the rent, $78 or whatever some ridiculous number is. So, but I do agree with you. If you live in San Diego and you're here, there's just such great opportunity here too.
Yeah.
It's just this city is just like, if you go anywhere in the world, not here in just the nation, but anywhere in the world, and you tell people you're from San Diego, the next line is, "Oh my gosh, you're so lucky," or "Oh my gosh, I love the place," or "That's one of the best places in the world." That's
so
just
funny. Actually, I was leaving Santa Monica from one of the Strategic Coach quarterly workshops a couple weeks ago, and I usually select on my Ubers quiet preferred, just because I'm kind of like an introvert at the end of the day.
Yeah.
To recharge. I don't want to chat it up with every Uber driver. But,
do you Uber everywhere?
not everywhere,
Okay.
but sometimes.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And so he's like, "Hey man, you heading to San Diego?" I was like, "Yeah, how'd you know?" Because he was taking me to the train station. He's like, "Well, I figured you weren't going to San Bernardino or whatever." And I'm like, "Oh, that's funny, this guy." And then he's all, "Yeah, man, that's the last of the good vibes, bro. San Diego." He's like, "Gatekeep that place, bro." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" He's like, "Gatekeep, like if you go to New York, New Yorkers say like, this is how it's done here, like San Diego's good vibes, like, make sure you gatekeep that place." And he was talking about how LA's went down in San Francisco and the different spots. And so San Diego's becoming this place where people are like, wow, actually, this is a really cool place to live. And so I think it's only going to get better. Especially Orange County's doing really well too, an adjacent market that,
a lot of wealth.
Yeah, a lot of wealth and a lot of really high quality of living. So I think
like Laguna's cool too, cool vibes, right? Like, totally.
But
San Diego is a very special place for sure. Like it's just from North County down.
Yeah,
I agree. And then people buying here, the wealth that's coming in here is just unbelievable. Like if you just, I live in La Jolla, and I work out at Lifetime, so I go early. But you start to meet a lot of people. A lot of people there have a lot of money, or they're big builders of this, and you start talking to people. And then I live in the shores, so you start figuring out who lives there, and just networking and stuff. The amount of money coming into places like Rancho Del Mar and La Jolla, it's the second, third homes. And I live in the hills, so it's like I tell people like I know what's going on. I know who's there. I know it's a second home. I know it's crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot of movers and shakers.
There's I look at a house that's sold, I look up who bought it, I'm like, oh, okay. The number 2 of this company or that. Yeah. So it's a beautiful place. So I think if you buy here and you can do it, like you said, long term, you can build wealth.
Yeah. One thing I really think is cool I wanted to ask you about was getting this lobbyist. So to help with, because a lot of people don't take action into their own hands.
When we took action, it was like we went from
what happened? Like,
it's so I don't remember exactly, but we knew this thing was popping up. Then somehow I never met Dan Feder in person. It's kind of funny. Before this, he contacted me during COVID. Because people started I don't know why people always contact us. I think because we have this podcast and media. Yeah. He was like, nobody's gonna pay rent. And I go, relax. Like everybody's like, calm down, relax. Like we don't know anything. Just relax. And I know Wendy from the KTS St. John's. So I was even talking to her. I go, hey, what are you hearing? So I'm trying to help people. Like, okay, what's the background? What's this? And I'm trying to communicate. And then sure enough, okay, 95% paid. This paid. Okay, it worked out. I think we met there, and then this thing came rearing its head back, and I think we went into got on a call, had a meeting, had a lobbyist. This stuff was really, really fast.
That's cool.
It was like this. We had some of the large department owners in San Diego in a room right away. They're like,
yeah. What was so you had that meeting, you hired a lobbyist.
We interviewed a few within the meeting. We had a few come in, and we had this whole group. I mean, there's some, I don't want to mention names just out of respect, but there's, if you know who they are, very large apartment owners.
Yeah.
And then other people that are with them. So
you plugged your network. You said, hey,
yeah, because they were concerned, and it was just like more like awareness. And then so now they're aware of what we're doing. A lot of them are not going to show face stuff. I get it, but they're behind. But yeah, they're concerned. So we just got the lobbyist, wrote a check, and then really what that person did is get us in front of people to have conversations.
Got it. So you got in front of politicians to have conversations. Yep. And ultimately, was it effective, do you think?
Yeah, 100%.
Tell me more.
It was effective because what they were proposing, if we would have just done nothing, we think would have more passed. So we went in there, to be frank, and said, if you're going to pass this, we're going to sue you. We're all going to sue you.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we don't want a lawsuit. And then we were just meeting with Todd's team, in the background. Yeah. And instead of going in there like a bunch of bulldogs, we went in there, and what you do and what we do is educate.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us what you're going to do. And then we start spitting out facts and, putting it together. So Dan and Crystal were doing all the meetings, by the way.
Got it.
And so they're spitting out facts. And then, okay, we're listening. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then what do you, we're not going to kill it. What do you think as a community you would accept? So we were sitting in this room with all these people and going, look, we don't have time to reach out to everybody because this is coming fast. Mm-hmm. What do you think what are there's 15 points? What can we live with?
Yeah.
Nothing. Well, that's not, we already know that's not going to work. We were trying to get rid of it. They're like, it's not. Mm-hmm. So we said this. And I mean, I asked the lobbyist, I said, hey, he goes, of course it made a difference. If you guys didn't do that, it could have been worse.
Yeah.
So we just act quickly.
And you felt like they were receptive, most of the people you met with?
Not much. Yeah. It was frustrating because, Dan did teach us, if you guys know Dan, if not, I'm not going to mention more, but if you know who he is, if Dan did teach us that you could give somebody money, you can meet with them, but then it turns around, they might not vote. So we had somebody met with and they didn't vote. And then you have to call and they go, well, I had pressure. You're like,
Yeah. What do you think about...
But they listened to say, we know you're going to vote this way, but can you at least go talk to them and chill out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever ask them or tell them like, hey, in addition to the lawsuit, we're going to rally or campaign against you in the next election?
Yep. I know that I didn't personally say that, but I know that's basically, that's what people do. If it's not just us, other people go, if you don't do this, we're going to do this, that's what happens. Yeah. Exactly right.
I think that's awesome. You guys did that. And I definitely need to still connect with Dan and learn more, because when the AB 2216, a little bit about my story recently with rent control and trying to improve things for the community. It was, for those of you who don't know, it's the bill they passed, or they were trying to pass, to force owners to accept pets, and you couldn't charge a pet rent or a pet deposit. And that was like the change in my psyche, where I'm like, whoa, this is actually gonna get really bad, and I have to actually finally do something. Like, this is I can't just read the articles, click the campaign alert or whatever, and then move on with my life. So I started meeting with more people. I found you had that rent control resurgence event, which was awesome, bringing people together. And I think one problem with property owners is we're all isolated. We don't talk.
That was a good event. I think a lot of people, it was funny because we scared people, right in the beginning. I mean, like we were talking about, like, you gotta hit them, you gotta scare them. I mean, we knew this thing is, there's people we knew that work at the city that are close to Todd and the crew, right? That work in and they were like, when they saw the law, like, wait a minute, I have to give 2 months. Like, well, I don't have that kind of money. If somebody was out there, like, well, then sell your property. And these are people that work with them. They're like, what? So at the end of the day, I always ask, it's like, why are we doing this? Are we doing this for the good of San Diego, for the community, for the residents, right? For the whole enchilada here? Or are we doing this because this wins votes?
Yeah.
Most cities that do this have done this rent control and over squeeze. It, like you said, it actually does the worst, and we can explain why. If you can't raise rents and you can't do things, then you're less likely to improve your property and invest into it. It's just like a business. I mean, there's a reason why insurance companies have left California or Florida, because they cannot charge a fee, or they have something, it's a political thing here. But if it doesn't make financial sense, they're like, we're out.
Yeah.
And then if you want me to come back, well, then we can't, we're not going to run a business. We're not a nonprofit, where we're going to lose money. And so that's what I tell people, that's why the insurance companies, we can sit here and go this or that. If it doesn't make financial sense, they're just leaving. Yeah. Well, hey, I really appreciate you coming by. I think this is a fun conversation. We can be, maybe once you kind of, get all these names together and everything, we can maybe kind of have an episode where you go through it and stuff like that for the election, to kind of educate people on like who's really for the housing and not. And whether no bias, but it's like, let's just look, because we're both in housing. It matters. If this gets out to people that are in housing, they want to get involved, reach out to us. But the way you're going to reach out is reach out to local politicians, send a letter, hear your voice, educate your tenants, educate people around you what really it means for rent control. And I think the more we can educate politicians, tenants, and things like that, so they understand like, hey, it's not like some form of rent control might be okay, but if you start really turning the nozzle too much, it actually is a really lose-lose for both sides. Yeah. And then it's a problem. Yeah.
If you're already a real estate investor, you know that aside from cash flow, you also get huge tax benefits by investing in real estate. But are you taking full advantage of all the potential tax benefits? We've been working with Tim Looney at CSSI for a few years now, and he's saved us and our clients hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in taxes doing cost segregation studies on their properties. Let me give you a few examples. We bought a property in 2019. If we had just used straight line depreciation, we would have saved about $18,750 in taxes. But because we did a cost seg, we saved $258,000. That's $239,350 more than standard straight line depreciation in the first year. The other great thing is, if you're classified as a real estate professional, you can apply this to other sources of income like W-2 or 1099 income, and you can also roll over any unused depreciation to future years. If you've owned your properties for a few years already, don't worry, you can still do a cost seg and save big on your taxes. This is not tax advice, so consult your CPA to see if you qualify to take advantage of these benefits. Call or text Tim at 318-469-9861 to get your complimentary property analysis. Once again, that's 318-469-9861. And I'll also include his information in the show notes. You guys don't want to miss out on these tax savings.